In this analysis video, we're going to take a look at Sergio Garcia. Now, Sergio Garcia is known as a great ball striker on tour, and his swing is characterized by the incredible narrowing of the arms during transition, or the club to the arms during transition. We're going to take a look at a couple other key moves that I think make his swing work, as well as what makes it different from those he's often compared to, such as Ben Hogan. So the first move we want to look at is the narrowing or the hinging of the wrists in transition. So every swing vision I've seen or was able to download highlights how narrow this angle gets right there and how it keeps decreasing. I'm going to show you that some of that is a result of more what his upper body is doing and the shallowing moves that he used, as opposed to an actual anatomical change. When we look at hinging of the wrists, as if you were using a hammer, the anatomical normal is about 25 degrees. So from this point of view, if there's 90 degrees, it's not quite, but it looks like he's hinging his wrist about 45 degrees, which would be double what all the physical therapy books would say is anatomical normal. So if we look from this obscure view, or from the overhead from behind, if we get him down to about the same position, you can see that that left arm is kind of in that range, and this is, it's definitely less than 90 degrees, but nowhere near this 40-degree angle that we're getting from the face-on view. So part of it is this optical illusion that he's really hinging his wrist. Where that optical illusion comes from is more of the flattening of the move, or the rotation of the forearms, combined with the fact that his upper body or his thorax is still pointing well behind the golf ball. So over on the right, we have John Senden. John Senden is another golfer who doesn't rotate his upper body in his transition, and so as a result, it will give the appearance of an extremely narrow, extremely rehinged wrist movement in transition. So for example, here we have Jason Day, and you'll see that this whole unit is going to rotate as a result of the thorax rotating here in transition. If we compare that, or if we imagine how we could kind of switch bodies, if we go up to the top of the swing here with Sergio, you'll see that his chest stays pointing over here and his arms pull down while his wrists flatten. That gives the appearance of a much greater angle than if everything was to rotate together. He's over here, Jason Day has his wrist hinge probably not quite as much as Sergio. Sergio, with his wrist movement, would probably look similar over like this. On the same kind of comparison, if we were to take Jason Day with his upper body rotating a little bit more through transition and put his wrists over on Sergio, they would probably look something more like that. So if you want to give the appearance that you're really rehinging your wrists in transition, try to keep your chest facing away from the target longer. That will help take away some of the slack through that lead arm, which will maximize how much wrist hinge you can create. It'll also give a little bit of an optical illusion that you're creating more than is humanly possible. So now that we've discussed the hinging of the wrist, let's take a look at what I think is more unique in Sergio's swing, which is looking at his body pivot as it relates to this arm movement. So you'll see during the backswing, he's one of the few golfers who gets onto the outside of his foot, because you can see the inside of his foot rolling there. And you'll see that he gets towards the outside of his foot, and there's a lot more knee action. Then as he starts down, you'll see that there's a good amount of rotational movement, but there's not very much side bend, as in it's almost as if he's staying very vertical with his pelvis or underneath his thorax, or kind of creating an axis like this, and he's spinning around it with his lower body and legs. While he's doing that, he's pulling down with his arms in order to create some power. So if he was to use more of, say, a Jason Day arm movement, he would be very steep. So that arm dropping and extreme forearm rotation is going to shallow the club, which balances out that steeper body movement than what we would typically see on tour. The other thing is, as a result of being in this steep position, he will tend to have a very late shallowing move. As in, you'll see that as he goes into the release, compared to most, he'll have an even more pronounced amount of side bend through the release because he didn't have any of it happening during the end of transition. So very few amateur golfers would be able to handle that much late side bend, and they'd struggle with having the arms in this steeper position. So from the down the line, what I mean is, typically once an amateur golfer started that tumble move, they would tend to rehinge the wrists and the club would continue working very much to the left. But because Sergio imparts this late shallow body movement, that gives him a very classic looking kind of finish position right out in there. So very few amateurs would be able to make that transition. It's very much a body controlled release style, and he does a great job with it and has become one of the best ball strikers on tour, and he's frequently compared to Ben Hogan. What we're going to do now is let's look at Ben Hogan's movements and compare them to Sergio so that you can see that while there's a similarity in the narrowing movement of the arms, that's pretty much where the similarities end when you're comparing those two swings. Okay, so just so we can have a fresh image in our mind of what we're comparing with Sergio, there's that kind of narrowing movement of the arms. If we were to take Ben Hogan, you'll see he has that similar look of very narrow arms. And that look is created mostly because of this forearm rotation, where basically you can see Sergio is one of the more extreme in the fact that you can see his hands at this point already pointing up towards the sky. Ben Hogan's kind of in that same category, which gives the look of an increased hinge in that angle. Now, if we were to run through or scrub through his transition, you'll see Ben Hogan had a very pronounced lower body shift and rotation, and you'll see that he controls a lot of his swing with his hips. If we look at his right foot, you'll see that he does not get to the outside of the foot. He does a great job of pushing off the inside. And then through the release, you'll see that continued side bend and rotation happening at the pelvis. So because he has more of this side bend accomplished through transition, you'll see that Ben Hogan still braces and his upper body goes back some, but nowhere near the same amount that Sergio Garcia did during his release. So Sergio is powering more with this rotational movement of the knees and feet, not quite as much at the hips. As a result, his upper body is more on top of the lower body. You'll see that he doesn't have nearly as much side bend when the hands are about hip height. And then as a result, he has to side bend late as his arms complete the release. So the body pivots and the release styles and the transition powering are very different between these two golfers. The only similarity is that forearm flattening movement, but I think there could be some better comparisons between someone like Sergio Garcia and someone like John Senden than between Sergio Garcia and someone like Ben Hogan. So if you like how we break down the swing and you want to have your swing broken down, join our membership program at Golf Smart Academy and submit your swing, and we'll do an analysis video just like this for your swing.